joy is such an underrated element of learning, and I think we need to bring that back, not just with phonics but with a lot of things as well. And I think when we're talking about a love of reading, that's what we need to be showing, is how exciting reading is.
Welcome to the Leading With podcast. I'm Laura Brogan, National Phonics Lead at Twinkl, and today I'm joined with Kali Jauncey-Childs, National Early Years and Phonics Lead at Oasis Community Learning, which is a growing multi-academy trust of 54 schools in 5 regions. Kali brings a wealth of experience and passion in shaping and supporting early reading provision across one of the largest multi-academy trusts in England. So I'm very excited to be speaking to you, Kali.
Yeah, it's very official when you put it all like that, isn't it?
No, you should be proud. But yeah, I was going to ask you kind of first, what kind of led you to this leadership role at such a national level?
I think in terms of education itself, in the journey into education, it was, I don't want to be that cliche of being like, oh, I wanted to make a difference, but I do want to make a difference. And I think when you are leading at such a level in a multi-academy trust the way that I am, hopefully the intention is to make a difference on a wider scale and to make that difference as early as possible as well, because my role is early years and early reading as well. So I think putting those two things together, hopefully the idea is to impact more children and families, impact more leaders and teachers, and to start that journey off on a really good start, I suppose.
No, that's amazing. And I suppose, yeah, the kind of the combination of national early years and phonics is so important that it works together, and you've got kind of that oversight. And like you said, didn't you? You want to make a difference, but that's kind of what it's about, isn't it? Like, there's not many teachers, I think, that gone into the role just because they fancy it. You know, you've got to kind of have that vocational experience and that kind of mindset behind you, don't you? Because you are really, you know, responsible for these little young people's lives. So that's amazing. So you've led the development of Oasis's own phonics approach, Bookwings, which I know, you know, I've looked into Bookwings, and I think it's such a unique way of blending systematic synthetic phonics with real stories using kind of well-known authors. What do you think what was the vision for that?
Yeah, so we started this at a time when schools were having to go down that route of a validated scheme. So a lot of schools were at this point of choosing which one was going to be the right one for them. And for us, we wanted to make sure that whatever we were doing was aligning with our reading curriculum, our whole reading curriculum, phonics, reading, etc. And that is to develop a love of reading. And that's our whole golden thread throughout the Oasis curriculum, is developing that love of reading. And knowing that it unlocks so many doors, like so many opportunities for children and their families. So whatever we did, we needed to align it with that. And that's why we kind of went down this route of sort of half working with someone to create something and half making it our own as well, to really make sure that it was unique for our children and met what we wanted to achieve, really. So yeah, we went down the route of it is a systematic synthetic phonics scheme. It essentially does what it says on the tin, what you want it to do, but it is through these high quality texts. So every day we are delivering a new sound through a text that's written by a really well-known author. So for example, you've got The Tiger Who Came to Tea, you've got like Nick Sharratt's Pirate Pete and things in there. So there are so many well-known, well-loved texts as well. Lots of diversity, lots of sort of talking points, morals of the stories and things. And we are just trying to expose children to as many books as possible, so that they develop that vocabulary, they develop a love of reading, they are hearing things read fluently to them as well. And yeah, bringing it all together just to give children a joyful start to reading as well. Because I think when you think about like the the report about the reading decline and things like that's not necessarily happening now. Like we're kind of losing that love of reading, and I think we want to make sure that we are giving them that from the very get-go, I suppose, and that's what Bookwings is trying to achieve.
No, I think it's such a fantastic kind of message behind it. And like you talked about the decline, well, Twinkl have partnered with the National Literacy Trust, so we sponsored their Reading for Pleasure report, which showed, you know, that reading for pleasure is at its lowest in a long time, and it's such a shame. But I think for me as a phonics lead like yourself, it's thinking about how as children are learning to read, they're learning to love reading, and that is exactly what Bookwings is, isn't it? You know, they're learning to love reading whilst learning to read.
Yeah, and I say we've just been doing some training recently, and I talk about the ethos behind Bookwings, and one of the things I talk about alongside science of learning and all of those sorts of things is joy. And I say actually sometimes that can sound really woolly and really airy fairy, and I think when you hear about Bookwings there's a phonic fairy and there's a professor and a puppet and all of this, and it can sound very like wishy-washy, but actually joy is such an underrated element of learning, and I think we need to bring that back, not just with phonics but with a lot of things as well. And I think when we're talking about a love of reading, that's what we need to be showing, is how exciting reading is, and us reading for pleasure as well, and showing them what we can find out from reading. So yeah, don't underestimate joy.
No, I totally agree. I think it's so important, isn't it? And I bet what kind of impact do you see with the pupils? Like, do you see joy as they're learning to read through phonics?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I take people around for tours and things like that as well, because I work in an academy myself. I'm not sort of out of that. Yeah. I'm still assistant principal at an academy, so I take people around for tours and things, and I can just remember a child coming up to us, and about 5 different adults walking around, coming up to us and dragging us, going, look what the phonic fairies brought us today, look at the sound that we've learnt, and they're writing all these letters in what they think is mud, and like it's very immersive and interactive, and just very hands-on. And he was just so excited to show us, and that excitement is excitement for reading and for writing as well. So I think it's enough to see that in itself as a bit of a case study, I suppose. What you need to see is the joy on the children's faces to know that it works. Like no data can compare to that, I think.
Yeah, and it can work, can't it? I think some maybe approaches are a little bit too just phonics, and I think to have an approach like the Bookwings approach, and I kind of feel similar about Twinkl Phonics' approach with the kitten Sam and their story. Like, I've heard that schools that I've been working with as part of my role have said, they can't wait to find out what Kit and Sam do next. And it's that kind of, it's phonics, but it's embedded through that kind of joy and through that narrative and that excitement for those different elements. And I'd love to meet the phonics fairy and Professor Pete?
Professor Lexicon. Yeah. He teaches the tricky words.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Oh. No, it's so important though, isn't it? Because they apply that then to a character or something, which is so exciting.
Yeah, it gives them something to hook that learning onto as well. And it's like I said about the science of learning, there is all of that behind it. There is that schema behind it as well, but it is basically making the children laugh and smile and enjoy that reading process as well.
No, I love that. So I know that, as part of your work across Oasis, you also make sure that the schools have decodable books.
Yes.
And I know that you're a fan of the Twinkl Rhino
readers.
Yes. But why do you think that is so important, that as well as learning to read, through the stories, and they might not necessarily be expected to read A Tiger Who Came to Tea, it's kind of how you're teaching the sound, I imagine.
Yeah.
But why do you think it's then important that they do apply that in decodable books?
Yeah, so I think that is something that when they hear about Bookwings, they are confused about in the beginning, is that book is not a book that the children read themselves. It's a book that we as an adult would read to show them and model good reading, that fluency of reading, and show them what phonics is about, really, how they can apply phonics themselves. Whereas they need to have that ability to practice as well, and that's where the decodable reader comes in. It's that opportunity for them to put into practice everything that they've been learning in their phonics lessons, and that needs to be of a really good quality as well, so that they can again be excited about it, enjoy it, not be too bored by that as well. And we want them to be of a high quality, have the comprehension in there, and develop that fluency as well. So when we were looking, because Bookwings doesn't have, it's not a validated scheme, it doesn't have a set of decodable readers for itself, so we were looking at what could be the right one, and actually Rhino Readers was the one that we decided was the best, the one that gave us exactly what we wanted. I think the sort of illustrations that are in there are very child friendly, very exciting, I suppose. I think the comprehension questions, the practice at the beginning of the different sounds and the words that are going to be in the book, all of that combined together was then linking to exactly what we were trying to achieve in developing that love of reading, but on their own, to be able to do that independently then as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's so lovely to hear. And I know that the team, I'm not responsible for the Rhino Readers, but I shout about them. But the team behind them, they put so much love and attention into the the, like you say, the illustrations, the narrative, linking it all together. And some, you know, some decodable books can be that kind of extra, maybe add-on thought, not maybe as well thought out in terms of their content and their illustrations. And I think that's something that makes me proud to kind of be at Twinkl, to be able to shout about the Rhino readers, because they are, and I'm really happy that you found that they work so well alongside your approach at Oasis.
Definitely. And every school that is using them, because it is the one that we recommend that people use across the whole trust. So whenever anyone says, oh, I'm changing mine, or what do we use now that we've taken on 2 new academies into our trust, they are now taking on the Bookwings approach. So they will say, which decodable readers do we need to use? And I will always say it's Rhino readers are the ones that we are recommending. And when they see them and they get to experience those for themselves, they understand why, and they can see for themselves. So
that's brilliant. Yeah, really they are special. I've worked with lots of books, and I do feel like they are special, and you're the same as well. I'm sure you'll have researched a lot of text to find the right ones, so that's really good to hear.
Yeah, definitely.
Lovely. So a big part of your role is kind of, I'm sure, consistency, that, you know, fidelity comes, you know, up a lot with phonics, that implementation and that impact across a wide network. What are kind of some of the biggest opportunities maybe that you've had with that, but then also, I suppose, what are the challenges with having that kind of big responsibility of consistency, implementation, and impact across such a wide network?
Yeah, it is huge. And when you, like at the beginning, when you said like, oh, it's this many academies and things, and I think primary we've got, I think it's 35 now that we've taken on those new schools. It is huge, and trying to sort of maintain that consistency across those schools can be really difficult because everyone's got different leadership, everyone's got different demographics and cohorts in their schools. So it's about making sure that everyone knows that ethos and understands the why of Bookwings. Like we talked about at the beginning, the whole reason it fits with our golden thread. We're trying to develop that joy and spark that joy in children, but it is also based in research and things. Trying to get people, I suppose, on side with that ethos, because it is a very different approach. The way that we are teaching phonics is quite multisensory. We are encouraging people to take children outside and to go and find words in the environment, or to sort of write with chalk on the floor and things, all under sort of adult guidance and making sure there's no misconceptions and things like that as well. But that is a very different way of teaching phonics that a lot of people aren't used to. So making sure that we've got that why has to be there as well. I think when you're doing things like professional development and trying to apply this on a larger scale, it can be really difficult when you've got staffing changes and leadership changes as well, which wherever you work, whatever you're doing, staff turnover is always a thing, isn't it? Yeah. So it's quite difficult sometimes to make sure that everybody has that right training and the ethos and the understanding of it, without then a few weeks later somebody else taking over that role and moving on and things. So those can be some of the challenges. But I think the real benefits of it are the best practice sharing across everybody. So if we know that there are pockets of it being delivered really, really well and people bringing that magic that we know that we want them to bring, then we can say, right, this school, go and watch this school, come and observe. We can video things. So we're developing CPD at the moment, where we're videoing different people teaching it in different schools, different size schools as well, because questions we always get asked are about adults and how many adults do people have to be able to deliver it and things. So we're trying to do like top tips with different people as well. We have wider opportunities for CPD. So we have things called strategy groups and community groups, where we bring together the phonics leaders across the trust to have meetings and collaborate together, where we'll go into breakout rooms and things. And even though we're quite wide ranging across the UK, we can still come together in those online meetings and bring that all together and have really good high quality CPD to try and bring that consistency across everybody as well. So there are challenges, definitely, because it is so big, but a lot of benefits as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like it is a challenge, but you've kind of got that balance and you've tapped into, I suppose, the things to do to overcome those challenges. Like, I love the idea of sharing best practice. I think it needs to have more of an emphasis, doesn't it, in schools, and for schools that aren't part of trusts, for them to still have that network. That's why being part of a trust is such a support, isn't it? To be able to tap into each other's practice. So that's brilliant.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So yeah, thinking about that network of schools and supporting each other, what role do you feel like professional development plays in sustaining that really strong phonics practice that you've got at Oasis, and how do you approach that at such a large scale?
Yeah, so it's been a journey for us as well, because like I said, we took this on or started developing it when we needed a validated phonics scheme. So we wanted to make sure that everybody had access to what that looked like, because as I said, it's a very different approach to teaching phonics. What does that look like? And in the beginning, all we could kind of do and give to people was sort of PowerPoints and voiceover recorded things. And obviously, as the years have gone on and technology has become better, and we've kind of taught ourselves how to do different things and what the best approaches are going to be, listen to a lot of feedback from people as well, because obviously people have got a lot of ideas and things that they are noticing in their practice that potentially I don't in my school and things. So listening to everybody's opinions too. So what we've done is continue to develop the CPD to now having a full day's worth of training. So we've done that regionally. It was the first time we did this only about a month ago. Wow. So we were able to put that training on in different regions, and like leaders would send new staff who needed the full day's training, any new phonics leaders, etc. They all came to this full day's worth of training where we talked about absolutely everything, and then showed videos and things of good practice, but just a really good day to talk and reflect and ask questions, and just then hopefully leave that day knowing exactly what teaching Book Wings looks like in their schools. And then as well as that, what we're trying to do now is develop little bite-sized videos as well, because as much as it's great to have as many people as possible come to a full day, it's not always possible to release all of your staff to come along to a training day like that, and where schools are so busy and they're trying to prioritise so many different things, that's just not always possible. So what we're trying to do is develop little bite-sized ones that are just a little bit more manageable to access. Sometimes like hour-long training, again, just can't fit into the school day. So if we do little videos that are kind of like how-to videos or answering a question, those sorts of things, that's what we're trying to develop at the moment. So hopefully it will encompass everything for everybody.
Yeah, no, I think that's brilliant, and I totally agree. It reminded me of when I was working at the trust that I used to work at, setting up my camera, doing my phonics lesson and cringing watching it back, but thinking, no, this is so important, and you can't, there's only one of you type thing. So I know you'll have a supportive group of phonics leaders, won't you? But it's kind of, really thinking about how to best share best practice without you having to go everywhere all the time. Yeah,
and it is, there are some videos of me in my office as well, because I don't have a class anymore either. So there's a very awkward video of me in my office trying to teach like chunking multisyllabic words, and I'm like clapping to myself in the office, and it just looks absolutely ridiculous. But we are really lucky that we do these things like strategy groups, and that draws from different phonics leads from different schools who are then able and quite willing to support and to help, and they record themselves as well. So it's not just me. It's not just my voice all the time.
No, but you doing it. I think that's sometimes the thing, isn't it? As a leader, you've got to be expert. Like, you've got to kind of do it yourself and show that, lead the way, isn't it? It's that leading the way. And I think some leaders maybe don't do that so much. So it's brilliant that you do that, because that's why they probably are happy to do it and they're feeling empowered to do it.
Yeah, just get stuck in.
Yeah. Here's my video. Me in the office. Hopefully no one's walking past. But no, it is. So we're going to kind of think a little bit now about I suppose you talked a little bit about the different demographics of schools and things like that in the trust. So we know that for families at home, it's kind of, we're trying to put the spotlight a little bit on how we can support families, because they play such a vital role in the early reading journey for their child. So how, as National Phonics Lead and Early Years Lead at Oasis, do you support with that kind of home school communication across the trust? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a blended approach, I suppose, because as I said, every school has a different community, a different demographic. Mm-hmm. They have different things that they prioritise and things that they really want to champion in their schools. So we try not to mandate too many things. I suppose we want everyone to have that autonomy and to be able to go off in the different directions that they think are important as well. But we do have some things that we will provide as a trust so that people can access those. So for example, we've got like workshop slides. So in our school in particular, every year group will do a reading or phonics workshop at the beginning of their year, again just kind of showcasing the importance of reading to parents, and that always starts with an information session. So for 5-10 minutes before the children are invited into that workshop, we as teachers and leaders will talk to parents and just talk about the why, because I think, again, going back to what I was saying about professional development for the teachers, they need to know the ethos, they need to know the why. So do parents sometimes as well. And I can't remember where I've heard it recently, but somebody said like no parent doesn't want the best for their child. No parent is doing anything to purposely not support them or find those ways of helping them with reading or whatever else it might be. No parent wants to do that. So it's just finding the tools to make sure that parents feel supported and confident in that as well. So I think starting with the why. So we do give a little bit of that as a trust so that, again, teachers then feel a bit more confident about what to say to parents as well. We have something called daily practice videos as well, which sit alongside the Rhino readers, and what they are is like a targeted sound for that day. It's a little video that we send home to parents showing them which book the children learnt the sound through, how to say the sound, so using the pure sounds and things. So again, kind of upskilling parents with that too. We show them how to form the letter and use the little rhymes and the letter formation that we use as part of our scheme. And then again, we've got like a little caption action, like a little rhyme that they use to remember the sound as well, and that's all in that video, so that goes home to parents to watch with their children. So again, it's just kind of building that confidence for them. That's something that we'll give to everybody across the trust. But then in different pockets in different schools, everyone's sort of doing different things. So we've been doing things like PJ reading evenings. So we'll, after school finishes at about 4:00, we'll invite everyone back in their pajamas and dressing gowns, and they go around all of the different classrooms, and like their teachers are reading different stories. So they just go and pick their favourite teachers to go in and read a bedtime story to them, and we sell hot chocolate and things like that as well. So it just, again, it's creating that love of reading, but also that gives parents a model as well. They are hearing somebody reading fluently, intonation, all of those things that we know are lovely elements of reading and are going to really kind of develop children's communication and language, develop their reading, and they can hear somebody doing that, and then hopefully that gives them the confidence to go and do that at home and do that bedtime story at home, even if it just starts there. Hopefully their confidence is developed.
No, that is amazing. I've never heard that in schools before. I think that is so wonderful to be able to. I think it's about that model, isn't it? Like you say, and even though no parent doesn't want the best for their child, sometimes they might not have had the skills or the kind of journey themselves through their own childhood and parenthood journey to be able to give that. So I think that's just so important. I love that. That's brilliant. I was thinking about we do a Twinkl bedtime story.
And it is really, really lovely. And we get excited for it as well, because we get to choose our favourite story to share with the children as well. So it's not like, this year group has to do this or whatever. It's just, again, developing a love of reading and showing that we love books, so you can love books too, and spreading that to the family as well, into the wider community. There are lots of different things that we try and do in that way. So we do ready steady reads in the morning as well, where we will invite parents in to come and read with the children first thing in the morning, and again there's an element of them hearing the teacher doing that as well and reading with them, as well as them reading their decodable book. So it's like showing them, I could be reading like this if I just keep practicing and I just find out more phonics and I find out more about reading.
No, I love that. That's amazing. So if you could kind of, I suppose, say one thing to a parent or a carer that was kind of asking for what to do with their child at home but isn't sure where to start, what would that be, do you think?
I think firstly, ask for help at the school. Schools are always willing to help and have sometimes got a lot of tools in their toolkit, resources that can be borrowed and things as well. And I don't think there should ever be any shame in saying, I haven't got any books at home. Come and borrow some from school. Absolutely. Just kind of ask questions about it, because schools will want to hear those questions and will want to do everything that they can to help. I think just try just kind of dipping a toe into whether it's picture books rather than books with words, something that you can kind of look through together and develop your own story with children. So if reading is a barrier, because I know there are some parents who will come to our school who can't read themselves, so that is automatically they feel like they're on the back foot. So if we have sort of wordless picture books and things, just starting there and developing their confidence, or doing things like I said, like hearing people reading fluently. If you can't do that in a school, watch YouTube. There are so many YouTube videos of people reading a story out loud or anything, just to kind of hear what that sounds like, what to do, how to do that with their children as well, because some people just don't know. Some people haven't had that experience themselves, so just kind of dipping a toe in wherever they possibly can, and then just finding out those sort of things that are going on at school so that they can link it up with home as well. Looking at, I'm sure most schools will be doing things like learning journeys or sort of workshops and things, trying to access those as much as they possibly can to find out a little bit more so that they can ask simple questions when they're reading with their children, or looking at key vocabulary or anything like that. It doesn't have to be too onerous or too extensive, just trying to show that reading is fun and that I can be a reader too, and so we can do this together, and it kind of builds a connection as well, I suppose.
No, I love that. I think it's so important, isn't it? And just kind of, I like when you talked about just looking at the pictures and talking, isn't it? It's about that kind of oracy, that conversation. And I think you lead oracy as well, don't you, across the trust?
In my school, we're I'm leading oracy there, but we are starting to look across the trust as to what that's going to look like for us there as well. But yes, definitely very passionate about that too.
I know there's a lot of hats, but they all link together. This is the thing, isn't it?
Definitely.
And that's why it's so key to kind of have that knowledge of all of those things and how they work together.
Yeah, definitely.
So Kali, it sounds like the work that you do at Oasis is kind of grounded in supporting not only the trust leaders and teachers, but also kind of the parents and things like that. So in terms of when schools are at those crucial kind of assessment points, particularly maybe thinking around the Year 1 Phonics Screening Check, is there anything that you do to support the leaders in kind of how to do that, assess that well, and then not just the kind of, because they call it, don't they, sometimes weigh in the children, rather than just kind of moving on and feeding that into the practice. Like, what do you kind of see about that? Yeah,
that's something that I think I feel really passionate about as well, is, and from an early years perspective as well, with my early years and with my phonics head on, that it's not always about the data, as much as I work for a trust, and sometimes the data is quite important in a trust as well. And there's kind of that emphasis on, we want to do well, we want our children to do well as well. So what we will do at those points is we have a bit of a calendar, so we'll have mocks throughout the year for the Phonics Screening Check to make sure that we are kind of forensically looking at and analysing what that's telling us. So rather than just kind of waiting until the end point and hoping for the best, I suppose, or kind of doing mocks for the sake of doing them because we've been told to, or whatever it might be, we want to make sure that they're purposeful, because at the end of the day it could be quite stressful for children as well, and we want to make it as not stressful as possible, sort of preparing them, giving them a practice for that before in the run up to it, but also knowing what the point of that is as well. So once we've done a mock, we'll ask teachers and leaders to analyse that data, see what they are getting from it, what their percentages are, who is potentially scoring below a certain point. And then what we do as a trust is put on another community group, which is sort of, this one's a Year 1 community group specifically for all teachers in Year 1 across the trust, who will come to, it's just an hour session after school at these crucial points where we're doing this data drop, to talk about, okay, what now? So now we've analysed that data, we've seen what those results are, what are we going to do about it now? And we will give some ideas from our sort of leadership perspective, some top tips about, like, maybe you could change the time that you teach phonics, because if attendance is a real issue, or sort of punctuality in the morning, if you're always teaching phonics at 9 a.m. in the morning, are you really hitting all of those children who need to be in that phonics lesson? So something as simple as tweaking your timetable to make sure most children are in, or things like using different opportunities throughout the day to be practicing with your flashcards and your tricky words and all of those sorts of things when they're lining up ready for lunchtime or at the end of the day. So just little things like that we are sort of sharing from our perspective, but then what we'll do is go into breakout rooms and teachers will share those between themselves, and we'll kind of record those on things like Padlets and stuff so that we've got it to refer back to, and people can look at all of this best practice from across the trust, because what works in my school might not work in other schools. We've got different form entries, so some have got one form entry, some have got three, so that's going to look very different in terms of resources that you've got, staffing that you've got, so it is about sharing that more widely and finding out different things from each other as well. So it's not just one person again holding all of that information, but sharing it a bit more widely as well to get the best of everyone.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the examples you gave. You know, so simple, isn't it? And something that's really actionable for leaders to think about. Yeah, no lost learning time when they're lining up, because there's lots of moments in the day that maybe it is a transition, children are waiting, but how to kind of use that time so effectively, having your flashcards there and things like that. And I think that's such a very simple but actionable that should be kind of shared widely. And if one school's getting better results than others, it might literally be down to simple things like that, because they're just constantly overlearning with the pupils.
And it's the same with ideas for how to include parents as well in that process, because some parents might not know or understand what that phonics screening check is and kind of how important it can be, I suppose. So it's finding ways that people are including parents in that. Is it through a workshop? Are they sending information home? And if so, what does that information look like? Are they kind of identifying children's gaps and then showing those to parents and finding ways of sort of closing those gaps at home as well as in school? So as well as doing our sort of mocks, we use Phonics Tracker, which is a sort of assessment tool that will look at individual sounds, like assessing the individual phonemes for the children. So we can then break down and see which specific phonemes it is that the children are then struggling to retain, and we can then send those gaps home to parents as well, and they can be picking those up with them at home. So trying to collaborate and connect with people as well beyond just the school, it's going to the community there as well.
And I think it's so forensic, isn't it? You've got to really look at those really little gaps and tap into them, because phonics is so progressive, and it's like a building block. If one was missing, then it's not going to kind of stay standing. So
Definitely.
No, I think that's a really good tool to use, particularly with assessment. It's important, but it's also important that you don't just do it, you use it, which it sounds like you do.
And I think that comes back to the joy element there as well, where we're always coming back to, yes, it's important. Yes, results can be important. Yes, we do want to show that our children are achieving these results and are doing really well. But sometimes that individual progress and those little case studies that you can see of certain children are sometimes worth more than that data and that percentage as well. And like seeing children starting to read fluently and things. I've got a lovely video actually of a child who never attended a nursery, so phonics only started in their reception year group, reading one of the Rhino readers and reading it really fluently by spring in reception. And he's picked that up really quickly, and seeing that moment for that child, that's what it's about sometimes, more than seeing that percentage too. So don't be disheartened by the percentages sometimes. Think about the journey of where the children have come from and what it's going to give them if they just continue. Yeah,
I totally agree. I think progress is such a big thing to focus on, because I remember, I would say to kind of the leaders about the Phonics Screening Check, they didn't quite pass, but at the start of the year they weren't even blending. They couldn't even blend one of the words, and now they read a fair few. And it's that you've got to think about that progress as well, and that's why it is so important that you champion those pupils as well, because they have unlocked something there, and they might still have to close the gap, but it's really important to focus on that, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So in terms of that gap that unfortunately we do see is can be widening, what would you say would be something that you really focus on for supporting to close that gap in terms of those pupils that aren't maybe keeping up to the rest of the cohort with their phonics and reading?
So our our whole trust ethos is inclusion, and that's one of the reasons why I work for the trust that I work for, is because of how inclusive it is. And Bookwings and the way that we teach phonics is also very inclusive. So we do whole class teaching rather than streaming children. I think sometimes it can put a bit of a ceiling on children if we only ever teach them the first 6 sounds, because actually they haven't started applying those first 6 sounds as well as we want them to. They're only going to ever hear those first 6 sounds. So by exposing them to all of the sounds through whole class teaching, actually what we found is children are retaining those sounds more and more. So we've got children who, for example, we've got a child who has SEND, who has an EHCP in place, and he can memorise all of his phase 2 sounds, and I can't remember what the percentage is, but like 50% of his phase 3 sounds. And that's a child who traditionally potentially would have been in a streamed group, like a lower retaining group, only ever hearing those first 6 sounds. Now when he's ready and he can apply those sounds, he will have a wider pool to be drawing from when he is able to do so. So I think not putting that ceiling on children is huge and really important as well. I think there's ways that you can adapt phonics teaching throughout the lesson. So like I said, our whole ethos is whole class teaching. All of those children are within one lesson, but we adapt the application of it. So in the reading section and the writing section of a phonics lesson, they are adapted in different ways so that they are applying it slightly differently based on where they are at that point. And I think because it's quite multisensory and hands-on, it suits different types of learners as well. Because I think for some children who maybe are neurodiverse, sitting still for long periods of time is difficult for them as well. So we try and get up and get active in the middle of lessons and things as well to try and suit those needs too. But I think intervention as well. So we do a lot of, we have a package of interventions that we can do pre-teaching, post-teaching, or as a separate intervention completely. And I think in some cases it is looking a little bit differently at it too, and thinking actually some children have quite complex needs and are kind of sitting outside of what I can do in a whole class teaching. So how am I going to be able to differentiate this to meet their needs as well? Is it through a more multisensory way than I've been trying to deliver it? Is it in a smaller group? Is it, and just thinking of all of those different strategies that we can do to make it as inclusive as we possibly can, because that's just key.
I think that's so important. And there is that kind of big emphasis, isn't there, on the phonics is the research has shown it's the best way for pupils to learn how to read, but sometimes it looks slightly different, and those adaptations are so important. And I think it reminds me of once I was delivering a reading group, and the pupils were they did have a complex needs, and they were all working at the same level, but they were jumping up and down reading on the interactive whiteboard, and the Senko was observing, and she was like, they were getting all their energy out, but they were still reading, and they were still applying, but they weren't being expected to kind of sit. And it's so important to not like you say, it's not just putting a ceiling, it's also letting them express themselves through their own
we've had
means.
A child recently who couldn't access much of the classroom because of sort of dysregulation and things like that, but he loved a tire swing, and he would swing backwards and forwards on this tire swing, and each time he came forward the teacher would have a different sound and a different thing for him to sort of read and access. So that's
just the perfect example. I love that. Thank you.